And we're back. That was a tough one. That was a tough one last night.
Right.
Listen,
A lot of fun, but just a tough loss.
tough loss. Jack and JD, Duke versus Kansas recap here on Talking Ball. And look, I mean, we lost by 3 points to Kansas. I think we lost by 4 points to Kentucky. So if you look at the results, we're right there. But watching this game, it felt like a game that Duke could have won by 5 to 10 points if the offense had just a little bit more flow, a little bit more cohesion, and something that I know we didn't do necessarily a full breakdown after the Arizona video, but both of us felt like the offense in that win wasn't good enough, moving forward. But before, we go through, some of our thoughts on the team, individual players, how they can improve, you want to take us through the game, go over the game, some key moments. What did you see last night?
There certainly was no shortage of key moments in this one. So the final score, just so everyone was 75-72. Kansas won. And Kansas was ranked number 1 going into this game, Duke number 11. And if you were a Duke fan and you were hoping we were going to get off to a quick start, by the second segment, Kansas had built their largest lead, which was 13 points. And, we were hoping not to be in a hole, but there we were, digging out of a hole. And we did a really good job because by the last segment, the score was tied at 32-32. And the comeback was sweet. And as you'll tell us later, Jack, it didn't come from where we thought it would come from. But it was really, it was good. And the half ended with Kansas with a 2-point lead at 41-39. So then we go into the second half and we're down 2.
One thing really quick.
Sure.
It should have at least had the possibility to be a 1-point lead. Proctor was definitely fouled on his 3-pointer at the end of the half. But we'll get to more of that later.
We're going to get to the refs later. But, all right. So then quickly in the beginning of the second half, Duke takes a 42-41 lead. And then just like in a matter of minutes, it's 50-42 Kansas again. And we're back in the hole.
By the way, the one thing you skipped over in the beginning was we wanted to get off to a hot start. Kansas scores first, Proctor hits the 3, and then it's all Kansas. And that's what was like the second half felt like a repeat of the first half. And Duke takes the lead, and it was like an 8-0 run for Kansas immediately afterwards in a matter of, a couple minutes.
I think in my notes it was even a 9-0 run, but okay. So then the Kansas is gaining their lead, although Duke is starting to chip away at it. It gets to 57-55, and then all hell breaks loose. You want to take us through it?
Yeah, so let's see. Hunter Dickinson gets the post up on Malik Brown. He spins into him, uses his elbow around the face area, misses the shot, and then depending on which angle you saw, either Malik Brown undercuts him on the rebound, or he kind of more or less stands his ground and Hunter Dickinson kind of jumps over his back. Either way, it ends up with Dickinson falling, grabbing Malik Brown's leg. If you want to be positive about it, he's bracing his own fall. But then he, as I'm sure a lot of people have seen by this point, the highlights have gone around, he lands on the floor and then, may have placed his foot on Malik Brown's face. And it took a very long review. It felt like at least more than 5 minutes, closer to 10 minutes. But the officials did end up deciding it was a flagrant 2 foul. And the only thing I will say, as I know we are biased Duke fans, is Hunter Dickinson's facial expression once that was announced wasn't like somebody who was innocent. It was like, yeah, I did that. And he just looked like, the kid who got caught by their parents and was sent to timeout because his face just didn't change. He went and sat on the bench, and the whole time he had just this look on his face that, yeah, I did it, but I probably shouldn't admit it, kind of thing.
We have a new villain, and it's no longer Grayson Allen. It's Hunter Dickinson. And so after that takes place and they throw him out of the game, by the way, he sat there for a couple of minutes watching, which when you're ejected from a game, you're supposed to leave. But all right, Duke does take a quick 59-56 lead. And then Kansas comes right back again. It really was like a prize fight. He comes right back again, ties it at 59 all. We get to the 7:40 minute mark where it's 65-65. And then Duke momentarily takes the lead 67-65 on a Cooper flag, dunking in your face. Great move. Then Kansas comes back again, and it takes another drive from Cooper Flag to tie it at 71-71. And then, I don't know, Kansas takes a quick lead at 73-71, then 73-72 when Coop hits one of two. So Kansas has a 1-point lead. And then it's the first of two times that K2 had a chance to win the game. He went to the basket and he tried to put it up, which would have put Duke up by 1. And he was stifled by very good defense from Kansas, and he missed. He just didn't have court awareness that Coop was on the wing wide open. And then we get to it's 75-72 Kansas after they buried 2 free throws, and there's 3 seconds remaining. And one of the moments that there was some good coaching by Duke here, because they got the ball inbounds, called timeout. Then they did get the ball in a position where K2 had a chance. Tough shot, though. Threw it up from 7 feet beyond the 3-point line. Bangs off the backboard, hits the rim, and falls out, and Duke loses 75-72.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say quickly here is that the second to last play for Duke offensively was the inverse of the Kentucky game. It was Kahn driving, although that wasn't the play. It was supposed to go to Cooper, and then he kind of stumbled or was brushed off by Kansas, and then Kahn kind of had to improvise. But it ends up with Kahn driving to the rim, being contested, and Cooper, as you said, was open beyond the 3-point line. And in the Kentucky game, it was the opposite. It was Cooper driving, trying to spin, losing the ball, and he had Kahn open behind the 3-point line. So, look, these guys are freshmen. They will get better, but you would have liked to see, after what happened in the Kentucky game, and this being not too far past that game. It's only been, I think, like 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit less. Some improvement in that final shot area. Instead, I don't know if, I think it was a turnover by Kahn, because I think he may have tried to pass on that play versus trying to shoot, where he was initially trying to shoot and then had to change his mind because of the defense by Kansas. I think it was KJ Adams. And so basically, you've now had 2 big games come down to the fact that we couldn't even get off a shot. It's one thing to lose and you get a shot. Kahn's shot at the end, I guess technically counts, but as you said, that was a really tough shot. It was the play before that was the real opportunity to make something happen, and that's where the
Yes.
disappointment comes in that you just couldn't generate a shot. Forget a good shot, just a shot for 2 times in a row in these big game, late game situations.
So, um, I think we both have a lot of opinions about what happened now, and we've got to watch them against Kentucky, Arizona, and now Kansas. So we are starting to formulate some opinions, and we'll get there. But if you can, why don't you just take us through the stats, Jack, and let's understand how many points were scored by who, and maybe the stats reveal a little bit from the minutes that were played. So why don't you take over there?
Sure. So in this game, we had 3 guys play over 30 minutes. So let's start with those guys. We were led by Cooper Flag with 38 minutes. He had 13 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal. Also had 4 turnovers. I think that was generous. I think he definitely had 5, if not 6. Just depends on who the scorer attributed those to. Con Knipple, 37 minutes, 11 points, 4 of 14 from the field, 0 for 8 from the three-point line. Did have 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal. Also 3 turnovers for Con. Our leading scorer and best offensive player in this game by far. Should have got more attempts. Should have got more shots, more plays run for him. Tyrese Proctor, 15 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 5 of 7 from 3. 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. He was credited with 4 turnovers. I think quickly, the big thing on Proctor was he had, first half against Kentucky, scored the ball well, didn't show up
Yep.
second half. Same thing happened
Yep.
with Arizona. This game, he showed up in the second half, and I think as a team, they needed to do a better job of finding him because he clearly had it going. And for him to only have 7 attempts, there was a couple of times he maybe turned down shots that he could have had. But I think overall, they didn't run much, if anything, for him. And I think that should have been different. Let's see. Quickly, our center pairing, Kaman Malawach, 23 minutes, 4 points, 1 rebound in 23 minutes. The rebounding for him past couple games has not been good enough. 2 steals and a block, good. 2 turnovers. Malik Brown off the bench, 8 points, 2 assists, 4 steals. I think he had more than that, and then the number of deflections, he was insane. We'll talk about him more in a minute here.
Absolutely.
Sion James, 20 minutes, 10 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds, 3 for 3 from the field, 2 for 2 from 3. He should have played more. Caleb Foster and Mason Gillis both played 15 minutes. Foster did finish with 6 points, 2 rebounds, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. So if you look at the box score, not the worst, but if you watch the game, you probably have a different feeling from it. And Mason Gillis, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 for 7 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. So that's our box score roundup here. And where you want to start? You want to start with the good, the bad, the ugly? Where you want to start, JD?
Well, let's start with our. I think we agree. The player of the game, the only guy that kept us in this game was Malik Brown. He absolutely frustrated Hunter Dickinson, and giving away 5 inches to him. You
Maybe
wouldn't
6.
have known it. You wouldn't have known it based on the way his court presence was fabulous. Just a remarkable game from a bench player, and given the scoring that was coming from Cooper and from K2, his ability to break up the Kansas flow, he was the only ability really to break that up, because total turnovers, although I think it was the same for both teams,
Correct.
but the total number was 16 or
Correct.
16 each, which is not great. I mean, this was a very physical, very um, sloppy, which is going to get us right to the second point of this game. We do not have a point guard.
The only thing before we get to that with Malik Brown is that number one, he scored 8 points in this game, which may be a Duke career high, I guess, for him. And he hit that
a 3-pointer.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, which was a huge 3-pointer, which cut the lead to 2. It seemed to come out of nowhere. I think he's only attempted 1 on the season, and his play was phenomenal. And the thing that was very frustrating as a fan was the 2 fouls he got called on in the first half. Were one on a play where DeJuan Harris traveled and then ran into him. That was his first foul. And the second foul was Hunter Dickinson did the hook and hold on Malik Brown. They called it on Malik Brown, and then they refused to review it, even though they had the full ability to do so. And the way he was playing, I know his numbers were really good, but the way he was playing, I think if he plays more, Duke has a better chance to win this game. So it stung a little bit that, listen, his other fouls were fouls, but the first 2 were not. And so that kind of stung a little bit. Now, that's the good. The other part I wanted to say quickly before we get to the bad, as you're alluding to, is that while Brown certainly kept us in the game defensively, Proctor kept us in offensively. The 5 3-pointers he hit were essential. And listen, for a guy who, as I mentioned before, had good first halves, struggled in the second half, this was a great game from Tyrese Proctor. And I think so. And I think that it's important to give him credit because if Duke wins this game, we're talking a lot more positively about the team. And then they get, him and Malik Brown, I think, offense, defense, get a lot more love than they do. Sion James also was really good. Now, to your point on the point guard, Caleb Foster did not play well again in this game. And you don't have to take our word for it. Coach Shire only played him 15 minutes. He started the second half, and he played, I think, the first segment, and that was pretty much it. And so this team has got to figure out how they want to manage the point guard position. And based off of how the game finished, does that just mean Khan is the point guard? Because he did have 8 assists. He didn't shoot the ball well again, but he did have 8 assists. And so I wonder if that is something that, maybe more than I wonder, I hope that's something that Coach Shire will look at and say, okay, we may not have a traditional point guard, but we can use Khan as the point guard for this team because that seems to be the best option that we have.
Well, look, maybe as Duke sets up an offense and they're going 5 out and there's 5 guys, it's you just got to get over midcourt is all that Coach Shire is looking for from his point guard. You're not going to go far in the tournament with that approach to offense. We've always said that you needed the head of the snake. You needed somebody who could control it. And Jack, last night when we were watching, you took us through the championship years for Duke, and you pointed out that every one of those championship teams had a point guard that knew exactly what he wanted to do with the team. And the absence of that, Coach Shire has got to be looking at this. Clearly, he recognizes it by the minutes that he's allowing Harris to play. But he's got to recognize Foster. Sorry, he's got to look at it and say, either it's K2, kind of intriguing, or now we get to the X factor where we just can't. This is just, there's no way to figure out why Isaiah Evans gets no minutes. And we sure could have used a burst of offense. We don't know. We talk about this all the time. We don't know what we don't know. So is there something in the practices that makes it so obvious to Coach Shire that he's not going to allow Isaiah Evans to even be on the court, or even Darren Harris for an offensive opportunity for a couple of minutes in a game, especially when we were down by as many as 13 points. Why not give him a chance when, no one else? So I which kind of, bleeds into, we never like to go there. We never, but we would go there with regard to what is Coach K doing at the end of, his career there. And for the first time in 3 years, I have to look at this and say, Coach Shire has made some kind of mystifying decisions on how to run, more so the offense than the defense, but definitely on the offense. So, there's a couple of ways you can look at that with the lack of a point guard, the lack of a really good play coming out of, the timeouts to free up somebody. It was funny. We were listening to the game and they kept going, well, the one thing that the coach of Kansas is great at is after every timeout, there seems to be a great play, and look for the alley-oop coming out of that. And it seems like we don't have the ability to counter, and I don't know if that's on John Shire or if that's just, or we were laughing, we said that, heck,
let's do this. Let's do this.
Go ahead.
I think let's go over a few things with Coach Shire. Let's grade him, okay? I would say recruiting, whether that be the freshmen he brought in this year or the transfers he brought in, I'd give him an A.
A plus.
A plus.
Well, no. What? No. A, because from the very beginning, we have always been concerned that we didn't have a true point guard.
That's fair. So A, maybe A minus. Now, next part, being a coach, scheduling. We both thought he did a great job scheduling this year. He put on a ton of tough opponents. We even, Coach K would have never done a home and away series with another big program. He never did away games in non-conference play. So major credit to Coach Shire for scheduling the Arizona game, for having this Kansas game. Obviously, the Auburn game is part of the ACC-SEC challenge, so you can't really give him too much credit for that. But still, it's on the schedule, right? So you got 4 marquee games. Plus, in February, we'll be going to Madison Square Garden to play Illinois. So scheduling, I'd give him an A.
Okay.
All right. Now, the other 2 categories, I would say. So the first is going to be, as you were alluding to, the defense has been really good. So I think as a defensive coach, I would give him, an A as well. But offensively, I would maybe give him a B minus, somewhere in there. I just feel like, to your point, there is a lack of creativity with this team's offense. That I hate to use this example because they've been the best team outside of this year. A little bit of a tough start for the UConn Huskies. But Coach Dan Hurley changed his offense, and that is really what changed UConn. Again, not this year, but the previous 2 years, where they do it just a lot. There's a lot of motion. There's guys cutting. There's a lot of freedom in terms of guys moving, but it's within a system. And I feel like, as you said during the game, a lot of times with Duke, when they run the pick and roll with either Kahn or Cooper, the other guys are just standing there. And it's very rare. The only guy who will move, I would say, consistently is probably Sion James, who will look to cut. And unfortunately, on that last play, his cut kind of cramped the spacing. But
Jack, it even gets worse when the ball is in Coop's hand, because it's almost as if the ball is in Coop's hand and everyone else just freezes, saying, okay, let's see what he could do. Now, it worked in the Arizona game, it didn't work to our advantage to the game today. Yes, there are some spectacular Cooper flag moments, but all of if no one's going to move because he is smart enough that I have that image of him driving to the basket and then knowing that Proctor is behind him in one of the games, and he just went to the basket and then shoveled it right back to Proctor, wide open three. He is smart enough to do that, but everybody's got to be moving. They can't just be stationary. Otherwise, it's Cooper flag versus five players.
Or Khan. So I don't know. What would you grade the offense from Duke under Coach Shire?
So far in these matchups, I'm in the boy. It is hard to get to a B, a C plus.
All right, so we're pretty close. I said B minus. You're C plus. Fair enough. The last one, man management, the rotations. I think that I think that is where it gets a little bit tricky in the sense that the previous, obviously this is his third year, so we don't have a ton of time to evaluate him. But the first year, Duke really struggled worse than this year on offense. There was a lot of games that started out where Duke was down 10-0 early, and it was just kind of miserable to watch. And we kept, as fans, why isn't Jaden Shutt playing? Why isn't Jaden Shutt playing? And then he plays, and then you kind of realize the reason he's not playing is he can't guard anybody. Then last year, kind of similarly, there was a lot of clamor for TJ Power and Sean Stewart. And I felt like Stewart, a little bit more deservedly so. He played better, but there was still, you can kind of tell why he didn't play as much once he got minutes. And so, as fans, I know this year it's been Evans and Harris. And the one thing that I will say is that, specifically with Isaiah Evans, his pedigree compared to a Sean Stewart, a TJ Power, a Jaden Shutt is on a different level than those guys coming into Duke. McDonald's All-American, awesome high school player. I know the other three guys were as well, but he's just a little bit different. And I think until we see it and then can say, okay, Coach Shire, I get, why you didn't play this guy. We're still going to keep asking for it because offensively, this team needs a spark, and he's one guy who can certainly give the team this. We've seen it, I know, against lesser competition, but he had like 14 points in like 8 to 10 minutes against Wofford. This guy can be electric. He can be a microwave scorer off the bench. And with the way Foster's playing, the way Mason Gillis is playing, I don't see why you can't carve out some playing time for Isaiah Evans.
I completely agree with you. We keep saying that sometime in the first half, you want to get these guys a couple of minutes, get a little sweat on them, see how they're doing, and then potentially you're going to need them in the second half. Now, as you were talking, Jack, I have maybe we're being a bit unfair because here's what happens. In the beginning of the year, the first couple of games that they have coming out of the gate are scrimmages, and then they're against the competition isn't very high. If that's the first 4 or 5 experiences as a freshman, or even as in Mason Gillis's case, where we're thinking he's better than he's playing, and then you go play Kentucky, Arizona, Kansas, Auburn, you're going from the level of competition being here to here. And it's showing up not on the defensive end, but it's showing up on the offensive end that they have no real plan for how to address or what their offense is going to look like. Now, You said it earlier. Kentucky game goes the other way. We win with Coop coming off, two, let's say one or two amazing plays at the end of the game. Or in this game, K2 goes down the middle or Coop doesn't slip. And both games have a different outcome. But here's what I'll say to that. We'll feel good as Duke fans, but we will look at it just like the Arizona game and say the offense is still not right. And it's got to get fixed before they get it to ACC play.
100%, 100%. After, as I said, after the Kentucky game, there was a lot of ridicule for Coach Shire at the time. Pretty much same thing. Didn't play Isaiah Evans. How did he, work the offense, right? And after that game, I think I said something along the lines of, well, if we win that game, is anyone really being critical of him? Probably not. But to your point, now that we've also played Arizona and Kansas, and the offense has pretty much looked the same in all three games. Outside of the one caveat I will say is the first half versus Kentucky, the offense looked pretty damn good. But outside of that, it's been two games and a half where the offense hasn't looked good. And to me, at least some of that has to be coaching. Because there's enough talent on this team that the offense should be better than what it is. And to your point, as they move into the conference play and hopefully beyond that, that's where the issues come up. Even if we were to have won this game, it's still got to be better. And looking ahead, this Friday, 7 o'clock, we'll be playing Seattle, who is not a good team. But after that, it's two more difficult games with Auburn at home and then a Louisville team, which is much improved. They beat Indiana today by 30-plus points, and it will be at Louisville. So that's going to be a very difficult game for the first ACC game, where they're looking to establish the fact that this is a different Louisville team. They're back to the old Louisville. And so, yes, they get a little bit of a breather, if you will, with Seattle, but then it's right back to the grind against two really good teams. One, albeit not a really good team, a great to elite team in Auburn that looks like they are, as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen, the number one team in the country. And I think that is going to be...
Certainly playing like Final Four material.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a team, by the way, coming off of a, let's just call it what it is, an embarrassing NCAA tournament loss to Yale in the first round that seems to be playing with an edge and seems to have a level of confidence in themselves. They came back from 16 points at halftime to Iowa State. And I know this is about, we're supposed to be talking about Duke, but that's a future matchup for us. And I think that's going to be another great test. And to your point earlier this year, how will the guards do against that press? But I'm skipping over a game. We'll have plenty of time to talk about Auburn, probably at some point this weekend. Any final thoughts here as we wrap up this video? And it's not gloom and doom, I would say, but there's
not at all.
There's just a couple of things that can be tweaked, because I think the thing that's frustrating is that this team has all the pieces, minus maybe the point guard, to be a Final Four team. So I think that's more where this is coming from. Go ahead.
I think that I've said it since the beginning that we really don't have a true point guard. We let Foster bring up the ball, but I'm never confident that he knows exactly what he's doing. More often than not, he brings it up and he dishes it off, and we're back to the 5 out. As opposed to even Kansas last night, their guard, the shortest player on the court, just got to the basket and just he was great. He was fun to watch. And it seems that that is something that Coach Shire has to figure out. Am I happy that we're playing these tough games? And that's why you gave him a full A, and he deserves it for taking the risk that he may lose a couple of these games in the beginning of the season. And hopefully you learn from it. But these games, I, I mean, probably Louisville, probably UNC. There's not going to be the kind of competition that they're getting from these four teams in the ACC tournament. And then they're going to go right into March Madness, and pretty quickly, it's going to be back to this level of competition. And so there won't be, maybe the Illinois game will be, because Illinois always somehow manages to get it together and they become a pretty difficult team to take out. But I hope that there is a different approach to the offense, and maybe we'll see it in the Seattle game, Jack.
I agree, and I just hope we let Harris and Evans and Gangba get some minutes. But yeah, I agree. The only thing I would say there's not the great teams like we've played early on this season, the ACC this year, but I think there's a lot of good teams. And when you talk about a Clemson, Syracuse is all right. Notre Dame seems pretty decent. I think it's better than last year is all that I'm getting at. So we shall see. With that being said, subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment, all that good YouTube stuff. We'll see you guys next time after Seattle. Go ahead. You had something you want to close with?
Yeah, I just want to reinforce that. Every one of our subscribers, everyone that's listening, we ask you to just share it with one person and get one other person to subscribe. It'll help us out a lot. We work hard on our end watching this stuff and preparing for these YouTube videos. Share it with one other person.
And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.